Hello, Kat.
Hello,
How are you?
I'm good.
Cool.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So I wanted to start with your upbringing, and do you remember the first time that you get in touch with music?
Uh, no, I don't. But I mean, as far back as I can remember, I always sang, and I just liked to make up songs, like even when I was really, really little. Um, and probably my earliest memory of listening to music would have been my mom's record collection. She had this like really amazing kind of folk music collection with like Simon and Garfunkel and stuff like that. And it was always really fun to play those old records on 45 RPM so that Simon and Garfunkel sounded like chipmunks. That's probably my oldest memory. Yeah.
And where does the passion for singing at such a young age comes from? Do you know?
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I don't. I think my mom sang to me a little bit, but I don't really have a musical family. I think it's just some super random event. Like, singing's one of those things that feels good in your body when you do it, and I think as soon as I discovered it, I just wanted to do it all the time because it felt really good.
Do you remember how old you were at that moment?
I mean, my mom has recordings of me at about 4 years old, just making up songs and stuff. So at least from then, yeah.
And then when you went to school,
Yeah.
you kept on singing just as
Yeah.
a pastime, or
Oh yeah, like I mean, my first day at school, I remember that everyone had to give a little presentation, like a little talk. Like it was called show and tell when we were kids. So it was like, I went to the beach with my parents this weekend and I found a rock and here's the rock. And that's, those are the stories you tell when you're 4 years old. But I remember singing for the class on the first day of school. That was my show and tell. So I've just always done it. I don't know why. Yeah.
And this first song that you sang to your class,
Yeah.
was it yours?
This one wasn't. This was a classic children's song called "The Grand Old Duke of York," which is very, very British sounding, and it is. And he basically in the song he marches up the hill and he marches down the hill, and that's the end of the song. Yeah. It was a big hit. It was a big hit in kindergarten. Yeah.
And what was the reaction from your first audience?
Oh, I have no idea. That I don't remember. I'm sure that they all thought it was the most amazing thing. No, I have no idea. It was such a long time ago. But I remember getting up and singing. Yeah, what happened after that, I don't know.
Yeah. And did you have a band after a few years? I mean,
No,
when you were a
I mean,
teenager.
the funny thing was I came really late to music. So even though it was something that I did all my life and
Yes.
I came to it very naturally, I actually studied design. I went and became an interior designer for a little while before I came to Berlin. So it took me a really long time to take music seriously. And I had a little trio in Sydney for a little while just before I left to come to Berlin in Germany. But this was all very late. Like I was like well into my 20s before I even thought of doing something like starting a band. So it was just more like something that I did at home in the evenings all the time. And I didn't think that I could make a career out of it. I had a whole other plan. So and then I got to Berlin and everything changed. So.
And what made you drop your first plan and become a musician?
Well, I mean, actually, I put it on hiatus because I graduated. I studied design at university, and I graduated, and then I worked for an architect for a while, and got to do some really, really fantastic projects in Sydney. And then I was kind of, there wasn't so much architecture work happening, and I thought, all right, well, I'm going to take the year off, and I'm going to go and see Europe. And I wanted to come to Berlin because that's where a lot of my heroes are from, or have been based, like people like Nick Cave. But also at the time I was listening a lot to a band called Chicks on Speed,
Yes.
which were also based in Berlin, and I just adored them. And I thought, well, I'll take a year off and come to Berlin, and then I'll go back to my old job and back to my old life. And it didn't really work out like that because in Berlin I started to play shows and things started to get interesting, and it was like, well, maybe I'll stay one more year. And then a year would go by, and then maybe there'd be some more shows, and I'd be like, no, maybe a little bit longer. And I just didn't want to go back to Sydney, you know? I mean, Berlin is a really amazing place to be a creative person.
But when you went to Berlin, you already had this idea of playing concerts over there.
I thought my plan was to take a year off my job, go to Berlin for a year, see Europe, write some songs, come back to Sydney, maybe record those songs, and then go back to my old job. And that first year, I did a year. I came back to Sydney. Sydney was so boring in comparison to Berlin. So a few months later, I was like, I'm going back to Berlin immediately. And I just never went back to my old job. I just never went back. I just did lots of playing in cafes and lots of traveling and had an amazing time. And eventually music began to pay for itself and I could stay longer and longer. And that was the end of my design career, basically.
Do you miss it?
Yes, I do miss it. I do miss it a lot. But I mean, it's not the same as, you know, making furniture or designing interiors. It's just as satisfying as writing a song. But I mean, you know, you don't have like 1,000 people clapping you after you make a nice piece of furniture. So music is quite addictive. And I think one day I'll go back to design because I do really miss using that muscle. But at the moment, everything seems to be going quite well with the music.
Can you use, or do you use some of your previous knowledge on design? Can you incorporate this to your music somehow?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I do most of my posters and graphic design and stuff like that, just to keep my hand in the game. I'm sort of working on a new stage design for the band for the festivals that we're playing this summer. So there's
visual programming is up to you.
All this kind of stuff. Yeah. So I'm kind of, you know, I keep an eye on those things. Yeah.
And what exactly, you just mentioned that music is a bit addictive. What exactly is addictive on music?
Like, I mean, it's like when you make a song, like 2 minutes ago, there was nothing, and then suddenly something exists, and you kind of have this weird, like, it's just such a weird process. It's sort of like you have an idea of what the song is, but you don't really know what it is until it's in front of you, until it's born. And suddenly it's there, and it's like either it's, you know, sometimes it's a really beautiful baby, and sometimes it's a really ugly baby, and but it's always exciting because it's inventing. It's like every day you get to create something, and it's so immediate, and it's really emotional, and it's like a physical feeling. It's yeah. I mean, that's pretty addictive, sure.
How long does it take for you to create a song?
It takes. Yeah, sorry. That was always going to happen. That we were like, there was going to be something distracting. So I'm gonna have a sip of coffee while they go by. Okay. So, it depends. Like, I have songs that have happened in an afternoon, and I have songs that I've been working on for years. It's really, some things you really have to sort of fight with and struggle, and other things you just want to craft, and you know that it can be better, but you're not sure yet, and you have to try a million different things to find the right thing that says what you want it to say. Other times it's just like, oh, it's done. Yeah, it's there. And I mean, often those are the best ones because they just happen. Those are always the best songs because you just know what it is. And the ones that you fight with, they're the ones that I'm really proud of because I've worked very hard on them. But generally, I like them much more than other people like them. I have a different relationship to it.
Can you give an example for each of the situations that you just mentioned?
Okay, so I have a song on my new album called Bad Behavior, which is just a little guitar riff and a pretty simple chorus, and that just happened immediately. It was very, very clear what that was. And then I have, then I have like a kind of a weirdly structured song called The Sun. And The Sun has had many different verses. It's had different C parts. It's had different bass lines. And to finally get it to what I wanted to say, because I knew what I wanted to say, I just wasn't sure how to say it. And that took a lot of swapping things out and changing things.
And the feeling that you have once a song is completed, is it always the same, regardless if it was a hard or an easy process?
Generally, yeah, it's the same feeling. I mean, when it's easy, it's just joyful, and when it's hard, sometimes you just feel relieved. But I don't know. It's always like a really, really lovely process.